This is the situation we have to live with, and I have no doubt that the direct consequence of the occupation. Anyone who said occupation corrupts was absolutely right. And we are occupying the West Bank and the Gaza Strip for the last 25 years, and this is corrupting us, maybe even more than the American aid. Well, I would like this to be eliminated altogether. I think that we should pay for our arms out of our own money. But in any case, this is one of the most damaging gifts that we get from the United States. In the first place, with all that money, of course, our military personnel can buy practically everything they like without really bothering to think how necessary it is. And I argue that $1.8 billion annually for an army and air force the size of Israel's is far too much. We don't need all that money. It is far beyond our needs. But it has a more damaging effect, because for every dollar we get free from the United States to buy arms, we have to invest at least $2 of our own dollars to bring it, to store it, to train people, to use it, to maintain it. And if you take the $1.8 billion plus double that sum, which we have to pay or to invest in order to absorb the arms, you get exactly the Israeli military budget. This is the way our budget is composed. So obviously, if we had half of the $1.8 billion, we would have half of our military budget, because the factor which decides the size of the budget is the amount of money we get from the United States. Now let me tell you very clearly, I always felt that this aid to Israel is a plague. It is something that hurts the Israeli society and the Israeli economy beyond anything I can find. You have a society which gets $3 billion every year without working for it, without earning it. It can be used for any purpose they want. They don't have to give any report to anyone. And this comes every year regularly. I can't think of anything which corrupts a society more than that. And to those who are very, very familiar with the history of Israel, I would like to remind that until 1974, we had absolutely no aid from the United States. And I think that between 1948, when Israel was created, until 1974, we did very well without American aid. Of course, we had to pay for the arms we bought in France and in England and elsewhere. Well, having to pay for these arms, makes of arms very, very judicious. No one could say, okay, let's order another 100 tanks, whether we need it or not, doesn't matter, but we have the money. We did very well without American aid up to 1974, and I'm sure that once this aid is stopped, we will do again very well. We are not doing very well now. Now we are a corrupt society. And the official report of the Comptroller, which was presented to the chairman of the Knesset according to the law last week, characterizes the Israeli bureaucracy as corrupt. When Shamir was asked about it, he said, let's not mix the issues. Elections is one thing, and the report of the State Comptroller is another thing. But the issues are mixed. And I would argue that stopping to Israel would certainly not be a punishment to Israel, would be a savior of Israel, a life-saving measure. Because it cannot go on just like any individual who would be provided with unlimited sums of money without any obligation. This is corrupting. This is not helping. Now with the part of that aid, $1.2 billion, which is defined as economic aid, the use of that some money is also something which demands attention. Half of it, more or less, goes to pay debts to American banks, and that's okay. I mean, we certainly have to pay debts. It is not so normal that to get American money in order to pay American debts, but this has been arranged so. The other half is going to establish more settlements in the occupied. And this at the time, over the years, when the United States clearly states that they are against setting up settlements in the occupied territories. And they are against it because this is a violation of the Geneva Convention. They are against it, I suppose, because this may create an irreversible situation where there will be no solution to the Arab-Israeli conflict. And this sum of money is still being given to Israel. So the loan guarantees are denied ostensibly because Israel goes on building settlements. But the economic aid goes on and pays for the continuation of the settlements. So again, there's a good reason to ask again, what is really the American goal in all that? Now, both phenomena which developed after the war in Iraq, the intensified arms race, and this almost ridiculous American attempt to start a dialogue between Israel and the Arabs, must make us think where the United States is heading, after all. Is the United States really interested in a solution? And if so, how can we explain the conduct of the United States, which on the face of it seems to be evidence of no interest in a solution? I took the opportunity when I was in Washington a few days ago to inquire with some officials of the State Department, what do they see in these dialogues which encourage them to go on, fixing date after another. The fifth round ended with nothing, and they have already heard of the date for the sixth round. And when this will end with nothing, we will probably hear of the date for the seventh round. What makes them go on like that? Do they see any achievement, any progress? And one interesting reply I got was that they feel very encouraged of the fact that the Palestinian head of delegation, Haider Abdul Shafi, a very respected Palestinian from Gaza, has met the Israeli head of delegation, Mr. Rubinstein, and they shook hands. Well, I know from personal experience that these people shook hands before they came to Washington. I imagine that by December they will come to the conclusion that the fact that Haider Abdul Shafi and Mr. Rubinstein shake hands is not sufficient to describe the process as successful. And maybe they will look for another procedure. And I would hope that then they will really consider seriously handing the whole thing to the United Nations, where negotiation will certainly be conducted on a more normal basis, where the parties will be fully empowered to reach an agreement, and where the Security Council will be able to provide sanctions that whatever is agreed to will be implemented. What are the chances of the issue being turned over to the UN? Well, I don't know. I know that without it there will be no solution. We know also the United States traditionally opposed such a move. I said maybe in December, where according to my impression there will be a re-evaluation of the talks, they will consider also the possibility of turning it over to the United Nations. I never heard yet from any official in Washington that this is an acceptable idea, but I simply don't see what other conclusion they can reach, except to maybe call off the whole thing and abandon their interest in the region, which I don't think is very likely. But what else can they do? I mean, this is the only thing that they can do constructively once they reach the conclusion that the present talks are leading nowhere. Now, what the Americans can do in order to persuade their government to change the policy? Well, I happened to be in the United States in the late and early 70s, and I saw that when the American public really wants the government to do something, they know how to express their views. Well, I guess that you are aware of the fact that the Palestinians are now in the 4th year of the Intifada. Prior to the Intifada, you could see on weekends Israeli families going to the West Bank, to the Gaza coast to spend the weekend. This is finished. It is now very dangerous for a Jew, armed Jew, to enter into these territories. These are 4 years of Intifada. In the Intifada, of course, the Palestinians demonstrated their resentment to the occupation, but the occupying power did everything it could in order to suppress this resentment of the Palestinians. And now you come and you see hatred on both sides. What else did you expect? And I said that if Shamir's plan of inundating the occupied territories with the Russian Jews will be implemented, we will be in a situation where 4 million Jews and 3 million Arabs are living one next to the other, hating each other, fighting each other. This is the prospect awaiting us if the irreversibility which Shamir is aiming to achieve will ever be implemented. And I think you're perfectly right. I myself, I don't dare now to go even to friends in the territories unless some of them comes out to pick me and take me in his own car. It is dangerous. We are living in a very dangerous circumstances due to the fact that there is a nation, the Palestinian people, who very naturally and very obviously resent to be oppressed by another people. So this is a question of policy. The Israeli government wants a policy which would hurt the Arabs, ostensibly in order to help the Jews, but of course it doesn't help the Jews. Jews are not, cannot expect a comfortable and pleasant life when they are forced, as they are, to live exactly where the whole surrounding is populated with Palestinians who have a very good cause to resent the presence of the Jews. So this is part and parcel of a policy which I tried to describe earlier. It is true that those Arabs who are deprived of the property, deprived, grow to hate us. This is the most natural result. And I think many people who point out that the hatred of the Arabs to the Jews is increasing are absolutely right. And we know the reason. This is something which we cause. The fact is that the political decision was taken in Israel to develop nuclear capabilities, probably with the assumption that the Arabs will never be able to do that. And if indeed this was the assumption, it was a wrong assumption, but because they're capable of doing that. And we have reached a point where if we don't initiate the denuclearization of the region, we will find ourselves in a few years with nuclear powers all around us. In Iraq, in Syria, in Iran, maybe in other places. And the situation then will not be the one which prevails in the Soviet Union and the United States. Because except for building atomic warheads, we can do nothing else. One important element of the whole deployment of the superpowers was, a very important element, was the early warning system. No one in the Middle East can develop such an early warning system. It is more complicated than building the atomic warheads. So we will have atomic weapons without early warning systems. And you can imagine what will happen if the situation will reach the point where any one of the adversary will decide to push the button and send the first atomic warhead.